5,000 years ago, long before machines, before written history, before metal tools or modern engineering, a group of humans looked at the raw forces of nature and decided to do something almost unthinkable. They would move mountains. On a windswept plain in southern England, massive stones weighing up to 50,000 pounds still stand today, silent witnesses to a decision so ambitious it borders on impossible. This place is called Stonehenge. At first glance, it may appear to be nothing more than a ring of ancient rocks rising from an empty field, but that simple image hides one of the most astonishing human stories ever uncovered, because these stones were not simply found here. Many of them were transported nearly 150 miles across mountains, forests, rivers, and open sea by people who had no wheels, no engines, and no written language. How did they do it? Why did they do it? And what kind of society could organize such a monumental project thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt were even imagined? For centuries, Stonehenge was treated as a beautiful mystery, a relic of forgotten rituals lost to time. But modern archaeology is beginning to reveal something far more extraordinary. Behind these silent monoliths lies a story of vision, endurance, and collective belief so powerful that entire communities devoted their lives to building something they themselves would never see completed. And once you understand what really happened here, the stones of Stonehenge stop looking like ruins. They start looking like evidence of one of the most ambitious human ideas ever attempted. For centuries, Stonehenge has stood quietly on the Salisbury Plain, its towering stones enduring wind, rain, and the slow erosion of time. To modern visitors, it may look like an ancient ruin, mysterious, beautiful, but ultimately silent. Yet the deeper scientists and historians investigate this place, the more unsettling the questions become. Because Stonehenge is not simply a relic of the past, it is evidence of an extraordinary human ambition that should not have been possible for its time. The monument was built around 2500 BCE during an age when people possessed no metal tools, no written language, and no advanced machinery. And yet somehow they managed to arrange enormous stones weighing tens of thousands of pounds with a level of precision that continues to surprise modern engineers. The stones rise more than 20 feet above the ground, carefully balanced and aligned with astronomical events that occur only on specific days of the year. Nothing about this structure feels accidental. Every stone appears to serve a purpose, as if the builders were following a plan far more sophisticated than we once believed possible. For generations, scholars debated whether Stonehenge was a burial site, a place of ritual, or perhaps an ancient temple dedicated to unknown gods. But the truth is more complex than any single explanation. What we are looking at is not merely a circle of stones. It is the physical imprint of a society capable of organizing labor, knowledge, and belief on a massive scale. Stonehenge forces us to confront a humbling possibility that the people we often imagine as primitive may have understood their world and their place within the cosmos far better than we once assumed. The story of Stonehenge does not truly begin on the quiet grasslands of Salisbury Plain. Its origins lie far to the west in the rugged hills of Wales, where winds sweep across ancient rock formations that have stood for millions of years. In this remote landscape rise the Preseli Hills, a place that at first glance seems harsh and isolated, yet it holds the geological fingerprints of Stonehenge itself. Modern research has confirmed that many of the monument's smaller but deeply significant stones, the so-called blue stones, were quarried here nearly 150 miles away from where they stand today. For people living 5,000 years ago, this distance was not simply long, it was almost unimaginable. There were no roads, no carts with iron wheels, no beasts of burden strong enough to carry multi-ton blocks across such terrain. And yet the builders chose these stones deliberately. Blue stones possess an unusual character. After rainfall, their surfaces reveal a faint bluish hue, a subtle glow that would have appeared almost mystical to ancient eyes. Even more remarkable, when struck with another stone, they produce clear, ringing tones as if the rock itself carries a hidden voice. It is easy to imagine how such qualities could transform ordinary geology into sacred material. For Neolithic communities, the Preseli stones may have represented something alive, objects infused with power, memory, or healing properties passed down through generations of oral tradition. Archaeological discoveries have strengthened this idea. In the Preseli landscape, scientists have uncovered traces of an earlier stone circle whose empty sockets match the shapes of stones now standing inside Stonehenge. The implications are astonishing. This suggests that the monument on Salisbury Plain may not have been built entirely from scratch. Instead, it may represent the relocation of an already sacred structure, a shrine dismantled piece by piece and carried across Britain so that its spiritual heart could be reborn somewhere new. If the stones of Stonehenge truly began their lives in the Preseli Hills of Wales, then what followed was one of the most astonishing journeys ever attempted by prehistoric people. The distance between those rugged hills and Salisbury Plain stretches nearly 150 miles, a route filled with steep slopes, dense forests, winding rivers, and dangerous coastal waters. Today, such a trip could be made in a few hours by car, but 5,000 years ago it demanded something far greater than simple travel. It required an entire community to commit itself to an almost unimaginable task. Each bluestone weighed between 4,000 and 8,000 pounds, far too heavy for a single group of workers to move alone. Archaeologists believe the stones were first lowered from the Welsh hills using wooden sleds, thick ropes made from animal hide, and carefully placed timber tracks that allowed the massive weight to slide slowly downhill. Every movement had to be controlled with absolute precision. One broken rope or one misplaced step could send a multi-ton block crashing down the mountainside, turning a sacred mission into a deadly disaster. The journey then continued across valleys and wetlands where mud could swallow sleds and exhaustion could break even the strongest workers. Along parts of the route, researchers have found shattered flint tools and fragments of stone equipment possibly left behind as ritual offerings to the land, a desperate attempt to ask the earth itself for mercy during the long migration. But the most terrifying obstacle still waited ahead. At some point, the builders had to face open water. To cross the Bristol Channel, they likely constructed enormous wooden rafts, binding together hollowed tree trunks and thick beams to support the weight of the stones. These fragile vessels floated just inches above the waves. A sudden storm or shifting current could have dragged everything beneath the surface. Some scholars believe that not every stone survived the crossing. Yet the stones that did make it through continued their relentless progress eastward, pulled mile after mile by human hands, until at last they reached the open horizon of Salisbury Plain, where their extraordinary journey would transform into something even greater. When the exhausted travelers and their massive stones finally reached the wide open landscape of Salisbury Plain, the journey was far from over. Before the monument itself could rise, an entire community had to take shape around the project. Just 2 miles from Stonehenge lies one of the most revealing archaeological discoveries connected to the site, the settlement now known as Durrington Walls. What researchers uncovered there changed our understanding of Stonehenge forever. This was not a small temporary camp for a handful of builders. It was a vast settlement, one of the largest known communities in prehistoric Britain. Hundreds of houses once stood here tightly clustered together, forming what could almost be described as a Stone Age town. Inside the remains of these homes, archaeologists found carefully constructed hearths, stone sleeping platforms, and evidence of daily life that unfolded alongside one of humanity's greatest construction efforts. But perhaps the most astonishing discoveries came from the debris left behind after enormous feasts. Thousands of animal bones, mostly pigs and cattle, were scattered across the site. Scientific analysis of the animals' teeth revealed that many had been raised hundreds of miles away before being brought here. Some came from regions as distant as what is now Scotland. This means that people from across Britain gathered at this place, bringing livestock tools and skills with them. Stonehenge was not merely a local project. It had become a meeting point for distant communities, a place where separate tribes temporarily set aside their differences to work toward a shared vision. Around the fires of Durrington Walls, builders likely planned the next stages of construction, celebrated successful milestones, and reinforced the social bonds necessary to sustain such an enormous effort. In this way, the settlement became more than a village. It was the beating heart of the entire operation, a living center of cooperation, ritual, and human determination that made the rise of Stonehenge possible. What happened next on Salisbury Plain remains one of the most astonishing achievements of prehistoric engineering. The builders of Stonehenge were working in a world without iron tools, steel cables, or mechanical cranes, yet they faced a task that would challenge even modern construction crews. Some of the largest stones used in the monument, known as sarsen stones, weigh more than 50,000 pounds and stand over 20 feet tall. Moving them into position required not only strength, but an extraordinary level of planning and cooperation. Archaeologists believe the builders first dug deep pits in the chalky ground, carefully shaping each hole so the base of a stone would lock firmly once raised. Using ropes made from twisted plant fibers or animal hide, groups of workers hauled the massive blocks up long earthen ramps constructed from packed soil and timber. Inch by inch, the stones were pulled upward until gravity itself helped guide them into place. But the true brilliance of the design appears once the stones are standing. Instead of simply stacking rocks, the builders carved each piece with remarkable precision. At the top of the upright stones, they shaped rounded protrusions, and into the horizontal lintels they cut matching sockets. When the pieces were fitted together, they locked in place like giant wooden joints used by master carpenters. This ingenious system stabilized the entire structure, allowing the monument to endure powerful winds and shifting ground for thousands of years. Even more astonishing is the careful finishing of the stone surfaces. Workers spent countless hours grinding and shaping the faces of the stones, using smaller hammerstones, smoothing them so the monument would appear uniform and balanced from a distance. These details reveal that Stonehenge was not built through brute force alone. It was the product of knowledge passed down through generations, a blend of practical skill, patience, and shared vision that transformed raw stone into one of the most enduring architectural statements humanity has ever created. Yet Stonehenge was never meant to be admired only for its size or engineering. Its deeper purpose reaches far beyond stone and labor, extending upward into the sky itself. The builders were not simply constructing a monument. They were creating a tool capable of capturing one of the most powerful forces shaping human lifetime. Every year on the morning of the winter solstice, the shortest and darkest day of the year, the rising sun aligns with remarkable precision along the central axis of Stonehenge. As the first light breaks over the horizon, a narrow beam passes between the towering stones and travels directly into the heart of the circle. Today, visitors gather to witness this moment with cameras and phones, but 5,000 years ago, the experience would have carried a far deeper meaning. In a world without written calendars, accurate knowledge of the seasons could determine whether crops were planted at the right moment or whether an entire community faced starvation. The winter solstice marked the turning point of the year, the moment when darkness stopped growing and the slow return of sunlight began. Stonehenge appears to have been carefully designed to capture this exact transition. Some researchers believe the monument may also have tracked the complex cycles of the moon, allowing skilled observers to anticipate rare celestial events such as eclipses. If this is true, the monument represents not a single burst of inspiration, but the accumulated wisdom of generations who patiently studied the movements of the heavens. Night after night, year after year, ancient observers watched the sky, noting patterns in the rising sun, the shifting moon, and the rhythm of the stars. Over time, those observations were translated into architecture, turning Stonehenge into a colossal astronomical instrument, a place where the movements of the cosmos were permanently written into the landscape of Earth. Over time, the world that created Stonehenge slowly began to change. New technologies appeared, most importantly, the arrival of metal tools during the Bronze Age. With stronger tools and new forms of wealth, power gradually shifted away from large cooperative communities and toward individual leaders who sought personal prestige rather than collective achievement. The great building efforts that once united entire regions began to fade. Stonehenge itself was never fully abandoned, but its role transformed. The monument that once pulsed with ceremonies, gatherings, and shared purpose slowly became quieter, its meaning drifting into legend. Yet, modern science has revealed something astonishing. The stones we see today are only a small part of a much larger sacred landscape. Advanced ground-penetrating radar has uncovered hidden roads, burial mounds, ceremonial pathways, and ancient structures stretching for miles around the monument. Together, they form a complex ritual network that once connected people, land, and sky. But perhaps the greatest revelation is not technological. It is human. Stonehenge proves that 5,000 years ago, Communities without machines, metal, or written language were capable of organizing immense effort around a shared vision of the future. The monument is not simply a relic of ancient religion. It is a reminder that when human beings unite behind an idea larger than themselves, they can shape the world in ways that echo across millennia. Stonehenge is more than a prehistoric monument. It is a quiet reminder of what human beings are capable of when they choose cooperation over division and long-term vision over short-term gain. 5,000 years ago, people without machines, metal, or modern science organized themselves around a shared belief that something greater than their own lives was worth building. Today, we live in an age of incredible technology, yet many of our greatest challenges, from climate change to social division, come from forgetting that same principle. Stonehenge warns us that civilizations rise when people unite around purpose, and they fade when that unity disappears. The stones still stand because the idea behind them was bigger than any single generation. If this story made you see history and humanity a little differently, take a moment to support the channel. Like the video, share it with someone who loves discovering the deeper stories behind our world, and subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of the past.